You know how some memories just stick with you, even after decades? They stay incredibly personal, right? Deep down. But somehow, they're also incredibly public. Think about it. A quiet gesture from someone close to, well, an icon. Sometimes that gives you the real insight into how a legacy lives on. And that's exactly what we're doing a deep dive into today. So it's August 31st, 2025. That date marks the 28th anniversary of Princess Diana's passing. And our younger brother, Charles Spencer, he marked the day with this really personal, quite poignant tribute. Our mission for you today, let's unpack this moment. It's very public, yet feels intensely private. We'll look at the history, the context, get to know Charles Spencer a bit better, and hopefully give you a fresh way to think about the layers of remembrance around Diana. Okay, let's unpack this.
Absolutely. And what's really fascinating, I think, is how a simple act like this tribute can open such a big window. It's not just looking back at an event, is it? It's more about the ongoing story, how a legacy keeps evolving. We're exploring that intersection, private grief, public memory, and how one brother's devotion really plays a key part in that story. It's amazing how Diana's story is still being told, often in these, well, subtle but really powerful ways.
You've nailed it, that ongoing story.
Yeah.
Told subtly. So let's get into the tribute itself. See those layers. Charles Spencer, he posted on Instagram August 31st. 2 photos, really evocative. The first one, a beautiful bouquet, white and pink roses, looked freshly cut, straight from the gardens at Althorp Estate. And then the second picture, it was this really serene image, the lake, oval lake. And right in the middle, that small green island, Diana's resting place, that contrast, the living flowers, the quiet landscape. It was quite striking, almost poetic, really. The caption he wrote, so short, just a few words, but wow, packed with emotion. He wrote, and this is the quote, "Flowers we cut this morning from Althorp's gardens for the island. Always an impossible day." That phrase, always an impossible day, just lands with such weight, doesn't it?
It really does, 28 years on.
Yeah, and the sadness is clearly still so raw for him. It says so much about grief, especially grief that's lived under such a public spotlight. It reminds you that even for these huge public figures, the personal loss is just as deep. Maybe even more complicated because everyone's watching.
Absolutely. And that word impossible, it's not just like a figure of speech, is it? It speaks to the sheer emotional weight that day carries for him every single year. And what's really key here is that this wasn't just a quick Instagram post from, his office or something. It represents a real visit, a personal trip to that very secluded grave.
Right. He went there himself.
He did. He brought those flowers, cut from the estate, and placed them there himself. It's more than just remembering. It's like a ritual, a private act of love that he chooses to share a glimpse of. But the core of it is deeply personal. And this act, placing the flowers himself, it brings up a really important question for us and for you listening. Why? Why is her grave so deliberately private, so secluded?
Right.
It wasn't by chance. It was a very intentional decision, highlighting that balance, between her incredibly public life and the need for privacy, even in death.
That's a great point. Deliberate privacy. It makes you think about the unique challenges they face. Because like you said, it's not a normal grave, not a cemetery, not even a public garden spot. It's this small island in the Bludger Gardens at Althorp, the family estate. An island. It gives it this almost mythic quality, sets it apart.
Yeah.
And yeah, the island feels symbolic, doesn't it? But I guess there's a much more practical reason too, and a deeply personal one.
You're absolutely right. The symbolism is there, sure, but the reason behind it, profoundly practical and protective. Choosing that island wasn't about looks or some romantic idea, no. It was specifically, explicitly, to make sure her sons, William and Harry, could visit her in peace.
Ah, right, away from the cameras.
Exactly. Away from the intense public gaze that followed her constantly in life, and even after she died. Can you imagine if she'd been buried somewhere more accessible? The potential for it to become a constant media circus was huge.
Oh, absolutely. After that global outpouring of grief.
Precisely. A public grave would have been overrun. So the island became a sanctuary, a literal physical barrier against that public focus she and her family had to deal with. It was an act of protection, really, shielding her resting place, ensuring her sons had a quiet, undisturbed space to just be with their mother. It shows such a deep understanding of the pressures she faced and a desire to offer peace from that. Even in rest, it allowed for private grief.
That makes perfect sense. A powerful way to safeguard that intensely private space, especially with such huge public interest. It really speaks to the extraordinary circumstances of her life, doesn't it? And it's important, like you hinted, to make that distinction. The grave itself, very private. But there is a public memorial also at Althorp.
Yes.
They built that in 1998, just a year later.
Yeah.
So Althorp actually offers both things, the super secluded personal spot for family, and then a separate, accessible place for the public to pay respects.
Mhm.
It's not one or the other. It's a duality. Kind of reflecting the two worlds she lived in, private woman, public icon. Seems like a really thoughtful approach.
Exactly. That duality, it really highlights the challenge, doesn't it? Memorializing someone like Diana. How do you honor the global figure, loved by millions, and the mother, the sister, mourned so intimately by her family? The solution at Althorp is, well, quite clever. Separate spaces. Equally significant. For private communion and public homage, it acknowledges that different kinds of remembrance are needed, both vital, and both had to be accommodated for her legacy to really resonate, but without trampling on the family's right to grieve privately. It's a managed public-private sphere, something quite rare.
Okay, let's just step back for a second. The historical context. It's so crucial to why August 31st is, as he put it, an impossible day. She died, tragically, in that Paris car crash. August 31st, 1997. That date is not just an anniversary. It's like a global marker for collective shock and grief. So many people remember exactly where they were when they heard that news.
Oh, absolutely. I do. That event, it didn't just shake the royals, it sent ripples across the whole world. It fundamentally changed how people saw royalty, celebrity, maybe even the media itself. And if you connect that to the bigger picture, it just underlines how deeply her loss lodged itself in public memory. It shaped things for decades. The scale of mourning was just unprecedented, and the lasting impact means these careful tributes, private yet publicly shared, are almost necessary. Year after year, it's like this ongoing negotiation of grief in the public eye. Personal sorrow tangled up with collective memory. Her death was pivotal, global. And you still feel the echo, right, in these yearly tributes. They remind us of her presence and the void. It's a collective memory that feels, well, still quite fresh for many.
So let's shift focus a bit now to the man himself, Charles Spencer. He's not just Diana's younger brother. He's a public figure, too, in his own right, with his own distinct voice, which maybe gives him a unique way of handling this huge legacy. Formally, his title is the 9th Earl Spencer. That means he's the custodian of Althorp, that historic estate we've been talking about. And that title, it's not just, ceremonial. It comes with real responsibility for this centuries-old home, generations of Spencers, and now his sister's resting place. It makes his connection to her grave even deeper, more official. More personal, frankly.
Yeah.
He's not just her brother. He's the guardian of her sanctuary.
Exactly. And beyond that role, beyond the title, Charles Spencer has built this really significant professional life, which I think is fascinating when you consider how he approaches Diana's legacy. He's a historian, a really respected author, several best-selling history books.
Right, I've seen those.
Yeah, things like Blenheim, Battle for Europe, Killers of the King, meticulously researched stuff, compelling narratives. So his background is in studying how stories are told, how legacies are preserved over centuries. That gives him a unique perspective, doesn't it?
Definitely.
He understands legacy isn't just facts. It's about shaping perception carefully while honoring personal truth. It's almost like he brings that historical rigor to his sister's memory, ensuring it's not just celebrated, but, thoughtfully documented, protected, presented.
Yeah.
He gets the long game of history.
That's such a great connection. He literally writes history, and here he is, right in the middle of how one of modern history's biggest figures is remembered. And it's not just books, is it? He also had that career in journalism, broadcasting, worked for places like NBC, British TV. So he knows the media world inside out, both making content and, well, navigating its pressures.
Yes.
Which makes his choice to use Instagram for this very personal tribute quite interesting, I think. It's mixing private grief with a public platform he really understands.
Absolutely. That media background, it's incredibly relevant. It's not just a footnote. It means he knows the media, its appetite, its power, its potential dangers, probably better than most people in his position.
Yeah, you'd think so.
So when he uses Instagram for this, it's not casual. It feels calculated in a good way, strategic almost, sharing a controlled, authentic glimpse of his private grief on his own terms, on a platform he gets.
Instead of letting others frame it.
Exactly. He is shaping the narrative himself. Direct message, no filter, well, other than his own. He's not letting it get distorted elsewhere. It's an act of agency, really. Using his platforms to reinforce the personal side of his sister's memory, it gives him control over a story that could so easily be, sensationalized.
That really pulls it all together, doesn't it? His title, Running Althorp, his work as a historian, his media experience, It all seems to feed into this public role he has in preserving Diana's memory. And it's clear from posts like this that these thoughtful tributes on important dates aren't just obligation. It feels like a real, ongoing personal commitment.
That's exactly right. And what's fascinating is how he uses his unique position, his platforms, not for himself, not for quick attention, but to keep this carefully managed, deeply personal side of his sister's story alive, reinforcing the private legacy within the public mind. It's very intentional remembrance, honoring her memory with dignity, with respect, while still offering the public these windows into a very real, very human grief that endures. It shows that true legacy, often it's guarded best by those who actually knew and loved the person, not just the public image.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just bring back that image, those fresh roses from Althorp's gardens, placed on that quiet island. We've sort of peeled back the layers, haven't we, behind Charles Spencer's tribute on the 20th anniversary. From the personal act of a brother to the very careful protective design of a resting place, and the bigger picture of his love, his commitment to his sister's legacy. It's a reminder, really, even for these huge public figures, remembrance often grows from the most private, carefully tended acts of devotion.
It really does. This whole thing makes you think, doesn't it? About the power of a private place to hold so much public grief, and the delicate, constant work needed to keep that balance. Even for someone known and mourned worldwide like Diana, her memory is anchored by these intensely personal acts, guarded meticulously, and yet sometimes shared, like this. With a world that still mourns her, it really makes you think. So what does this all mean for you, listening to this?
Maybe consider this. How do families of really public figures walk that incredibly fine line between their own private mourning and the demands of public commemoration? And what does it actually mean to preserve a legacy in a world that honestly never forgets, especially now in our hyper-connected age? It's a question that keeps changing, I think. And every tribute, every flower, every quiet act of remembering, it just adds another chapter, another meaningful layer to that ongoing, complex, and deeply human story.